Hi everyone, this is our second confirmation video, and today we are going to talk about, is it rational to believe there is a God? So when I was about 13 years old, that was when I first hit this crisis of faith, I guess, where I started asking, okay, can I trust that there is a God? This God thing's actually real, that there's a justification for it. And a lot of times I think that we end up turning to science because that is where we get comfort. It gives us certitude. Science proves something until it's not proven anymore, but it's this way that we can verify something, and essentially it's a way that I don't have to rely on faith anymore. But I want to talk about this topic because it's really important, because at some point, if you haven't already, you're going to hear somebody say to you, I don't believe in God because I believe in science. And that can be really shattering when you don't know what to do with that kind of comment, or when you don't know how to incorporate science into your faith. Because the ultimate thing that I hope that all of you end this video realizing is you can believe everything your biology teacher teaches you. When you get into physics, believe it, okay? Head over heels, fall into physics. None of that stuff is contrary to your faith, and we'll get a little bit further into that. Because I remember sitting in a biology class and talking about evolution, and I had such a poor understanding of scripture, and the teaching that I had received when I was your age was pretty miserable. And so I used to just sit there quietly thinking to myself, like, this isn't true. The world was created in 6 days and God took a nap on the 7th day, which is a very false understanding, but that's what I thought. And so it's important for us to address this. So I want to start off by imagining for a second. Picture yourself in a dark room and you have a flashlight. Pretend, for the sake of this analogy, that you had never been outside of this room. So your entire life has been spent in this little box, and you have a flashlight. It's pitch black. You turn on the flashlight and you can shine the light around the box. So you can see the walls now because the light is illuminating it. That is science. That is what science does for us. We can shine a light on things and see them. However, it is ignorant to think that because you could not perforate that box that you're sitting in with light, that there's nothing beyond it. That would be ignorance. Now, when you start to talk about science, you're talking about how. How did life come from non-life? How did the world begin? How do planes fly when they're so heavy and they stay in the air? These are how questions. When we talk about God, we are taking a metaphysical approach. We are asking the why. Okay, why do I exist? Not how do I exist, because science can start to talk about the how you exist. But if you ask science, why do I exist, they are not going to be able to have an answer for you. So to jump into science, first off, when polled, 51% of physicists that are working as physicists right now will report that they do believe that there is a God. Why? Right now, the best evidence that we have for our universe is the Big Bang Theory, which was brought about by George Lemaitre, who coincidentally was a Catholic priest. But the theory of the Big Bang is the most prominent. It's the most believed up to this point. Essentially, there was a lot of matter in a tiny, I say tiny, in a small amount of space, and it exploded. That's the very abbreviated version of what happened. Essentially, there's a lot of entropy, boom, it exploded, expanded, the universe is still expanding outward. That's how the world started. So 14 billion years ago was the Big Bang. Our Earth is about 4.6 or 4.7 billion years old. So that happened. Science has said something outside of our universe had to operate on it, on those particles, to make them expand, to make them explode. Science to date does not understand what brought that about, what acted upon us to cause the Big Bang, because something cannot come from nothing. That is the big issue. Sorry, there's somebody at the door. That is the big issue. Something cannot come from nothing. So scientists are saying there needs to be something outside of our universe that acted on our universe, and we don't have that. We don't have that information. So that's our first question. Okay, what outside of this universe acted upon us to bring us about into creation? Okay, tuck that away. Now, if you can answer the second question as well, the first answer, if you could answer that, or if you could answer the second question of how did life come from non-life, you are going to be the most famous person in existence if you could answer that, because like science does not know what acted upon us outside of our universe to cause our universe to come into creation, we don't understand how things started to live. So as our world developed, our planet was carbon dioxide. There was not oxygen at this point. And cyanobacteria, it's basically like a relative of, plant. It's relative of plants. Cyanobacteria came into being, don't know how, and it oxygenated the planet. Then we have, over time, a series of things evolving that utilize that oxygen, and they breathe out carbon dioxide. Random fun fact that has nothing really to do with what we're talking about, but one of the reasons dinosaurs were so big, like nowadays we have small lizards, thank God, but we had big dinosaurs, big lizards back then because the planet actually had more oxygen than it does now. When you breathe in, 30% of that is oxygen. Back then, more oxygen means bigger creatures, and it's also kind of neat that if you are very, very injured, they will put you into a hyperbaric chamber that has higher concentrations of oxygen. You'll heal faster. Kind of fun. Anyway, but those are the two questions that science cannot answer. So when we start to look at philosophers like Thomas Aquinas, they say this points us to God. There is something outside of our universe that had to act on us. Keep in mind, we are not saying the Christian God. We're not there yet, okay? But this is what we're naming God. Something outside of our universe had to act upon us to bring us into creation, and something had to act to bring things into being, like bring things into living, because that's just a mystery that we have yet to figure out. We can look at what the building blocks of life are, but we have no idea how they originated. So super baffling. But when you ask, is it rational to believe in a God, a greater being that created us? It is rational, because those are the questions that people spend their entire life chasing, whether or not they're Christian. How did this all, how did that happen? But then we get to start to look at the why, and that is where religion comes in, okay? Now, I don't even know where my Bible's at. Oh, here's one. So here's the big thing that we got to discuss. So this is my heavily used Bible. Papers are falling out. It has a picture of my cat in it. Anyway, but when we look at scripture, this is where things get a little confusing for Christians at times. The very beginning of the Bible, we get a creation story that says, in the beginning there was a void, there was nothingness. And then God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God looked at it, and it was good. And then God said, let there be whatnot. Let there be, I can't even remember the order it goes in. Let there be water. Let there be this. Let there be that. And then on the sixth day, God looked at his creation and was like, it is good. So on the seventh day, he took a rest. Okay. So what are you supposed to do with that story? Because if you read the very first creation, it's Genesis chapter 1. It's the very first book of the Bible. But if you read it, this is what our world, if I can even find the right page, this is what they're saying the world would have looked like. The authors of it say that basically we live in a snow globe world, which I can't even find it. Here we go. This is what the authors are saying the world looks like. We live in a snow globe. The water is trapped up here. Oh, look, my Bible literally just fell apart. But the water is trapped up here. We're held up by columns. The earth is flat. I don't know if you noticed that, but it's wrong. Okay, so what are you supposed to do with science over here and then scripture that's wrong? It's incorrect scientifically. Well, here's the thing. We don't use this. This is not a science book. So the analogy I like to use is I want you to imagine that somebody comes back, 3,000 years from now, and they find the book, The Hunger Games, or, just pick a book, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, whatever. They come back and they find that book and they read it and they're like, wow, what an impressive piece of history. They're going to be wrong, okay? Because if you come back, you find the Harry Potter books and you're like, wow, this is an incredible piece of history. They're wrong. And that could affect their lives very, very negatively. The thing is, that creation story, we don't believe it actually happened like that. Okay, there are things inside of Scripture that are meant to teach us about ourselves, but they are not science books or history books. Okay, the people that wrote those first creation stories had an education level much smaller than yours. So most of you are in like 9th, 10th, or 11th grade. They probably had the education level of a kindergartner, if even. Okay, we believed for a long time the world was flat. Science believed for a long time the world was flat. We also used to give people cocaine. We used to give babies cocaine to deal with teething because science said it helped. People don't know what they don't know until they realize they don't know it, okay? So when we read the Bible, we are not meant to be pulling scientific messages from it. So when you're in biology class, listen to your teachers. If they're talking about evolution, be open and listen about evolution, because there's a lot of signs saying that yes, evolution is, it happens. Natural selection happens. And you are not expected to ignore what science has to teach you, okay? And we will get more into this. I know that that's a lot, but here's what I want your writing prompt to be. I want you to write down any misconceptions or anything that you have thought about where your faith life contradicts science, or where faith and science can't go together. I want you to write about that, okay? If it has something to do with Scripture, like the story of Adam and Eve, which again, we do not believe that actually happened, okay? We are gonna get into the story of Adam and Eve, but we do not believe that there was an Adam and Eve, like that scenario actually happened, because there's so many allegorical things in that story that are teaching us about who Jesus is going to be. It has nothing to do with history, okay? The creation story where Adam was created out of clay, we don't believe people are made out of clay. Eve was made out of a rib. We don't believe women are made out of ribs, okay? So tuck that in. But I want you to ask questions in this writing prompt about, anything you have a misconception with. But I need you to write and try to write me like a paragraph, okay? Write things that might be confusing to you. What are you allowed to think here? Like, do you feel like you have restrictions on what you're allowed to believe? That's the kind of stuff I want you to write about, because the way that our earliest church fathers have always found themselves coming to God is they look at nature, they look at our environment, and they realize this could not have come out of nothingness. And that's when the mindset of there's something out there greater than us, okay? We're going to get further deeper into this. But anyway, that's your writing prompt. I look forward to reading it. I will be responding to it. And just always know that if you have any other questions, you can always feel free to throw those in too. And we are going to kind of pick up on this next week and continue on, is it rational to believe in God? So I hope all of you have a wonderful week. Bye.